You know, there are these moments in history, single days, where the entire future of civilization hangs by a thread, where an empire, a republic, a whole way of life is pushed right to the edge of oblivion. This is the story of one of those days.
Just imagine it. The most disciplined army on the face of the earth, marching forward, slowly realizing they've walked into a trap they can't escape. There are no screams, not yet. Just the rhythmic stomp of sandals on dry earth, and the sound of thousands of Roman shields bumping together as the circle around them gets tighter and tighter.
In the summer of 216 BC, this was the full, terrifying might of the Roman Republic. 80,000 men. Just think about that number. It was the largest army Rome had ever put in the field, all of them gathered on a dusty plain in southern Italy. They were there for one reason and one reason only: to deliver a single, crushing blow to an enemy who had been living on their soil, untouchable for 2 very long years.
Well, that's the question one man answered on that field. The battle is known as Cannae, and it's remembered as the single greatest tactical achievement in all of military history, and at the same time, a true masterpiece of slaughter. This is the story of how Rome almost died.
Now, to really get why Rome would risk absolutely everything on one battle, you have to understand the sheer terror Hannibal had already unleashed. He wasn't just an invader, he was a ghost in their backyard, a nightmare they just couldn't wake up from.
I mean, after crossing the Alps, a legendary feat in itself, Hannibal didn't just survive, he completely dominated. Over at the river Trebia, he used Roman arrogance against them, baiting them into freezing cold water before springing his trap. And then at Lake Trasimene, he used the morning mist to hide his entire army, pulling off what was then the largest ambush in military history. 15,000 Romans were just gone, cut down in a matter of hours. So that's 2 major battles, 2 absolutely catastrophic defeats for Rome.
Rome was completely paralyzed. They were in such a state of emergency that they did something they only did in the worst crisis. They appointed a dictator, a supreme commander, a guy named Fabius Maximus. And his strategy? It was totally un-Roman. He knew he couldn't beat Hannibal head-to-head, so he did the one thing Romans hated. He refused to fight. Instead, he just shadowed Hannibal's army, burning crops, picking off scouts, playing a long, frustrating game. They even gave him a mocking nickname, Cunctator, the delayer.
But Roman pride couldn't handle this kind of humiliation. The people wanted blood. They demanded a big, decisive battle to finally get this demon out of Italy. So Fabius's time was up. Political pressure won. They raised that massive army of 80,000 men and handed command to 2 new consuls, Varro and Paulus, with one very simple order: find Hannibal and destroy him.
And that is how these 2 armies finally met, near the little village of Cannae. 2 giants with 2 completely different ways of thinking about war, about to collide.
Okay, let's look at the numbers, because they tell you almost everything you need to know about what's about to happen. Rome brought the hammer, all right? 80,000 infantry against Hannibal's 40,000. That is a staggering 2-to-1 advantage. But look at the cavalry. Hannibal had 10,000 horsemen, and they were the best in the world. Rome only had 6,000. See, Hannibal didn't see 80,000 soldiers in front of him. He saw 80,000 targets, weighed down by their own immense size.
The Roman plan was, well, it was very Roman. Simple, direct, and incredibly brutal. They packed their legions into this unbelievably deep and dense formation. The whole goal was to use their overwhelming numbers like a battering ram, to just punch a hole straight through the center of Hannibal's line and shatter his army with pure brute force.
Hannibal, on the other hand, did something that must have looked like strategic suicide. He put his weakest troops, the Gauls and Spaniards, the least reliable guys he had, right in the center of his line. And then he pushed them forward, making this bulging crescent shape that bowed out toward the Romans. He was basically inviting that massive Roman battering ram to smash right into his weakest point. It was an absolutely insane gamble.
The battle began, and every single step was a calculated move in one of the most elegant and most deadly traps ever conceived.
So the Roman hammer struck, and just like Hannibal had planned, his weak center started to buckle, falling back, but slowly, deliberately. The Romans, they could smell victory. They surged forward, pushing deeper and deeper into the Carthaginian line. But the line wasn't breaking, it was bending. That crescent shape started to reverse, becoming a deadly bowl. The Romans just poured right in, getting so crowded they could barely even swing their swords. And then the signal was given. Hannibal's elite African veterans on the wings, who had been waiting this whole time, wheeled inward and slammed into the now exposed Roman flanks. At that exact same moment, his cavalry, having already won their fight, came crashing back into the Roman rear. The trap was sprung. The circle was now complete.
What happened next? It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an annihilation. The double envelopment was perfect, and 80,000 men were now sealed inside a ring of death.
By the time the sun went down, as many as 70,000 Romans were dead or dying in the dust. The men stuck in the middle, they couldn't fight, they couldn't flee. They could only die, literally crushed to death by the sheer pressure of their own comrades around them.
The efficiency of it all was just terrifying. For 8 straight hours, Hannibal's men killed at a rate of nearly 100 men every single minute. It was a meat grinder, operating with horrific mechanical precision for an entire day.
Let's put that into perspective for a second. This was the bloodiest single day of combat in all of Western history, and it would hold that grim title until the First World War, 2,000 years later. The losses were just catastrophic. Among the dead was one of the consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, and 80 sitting Roman senators. This wasn't just losing an army, it was a decapitation strike against the Republic's leadership.
When the news finally reached Rome, the city fell into pure, raw panic. They genuinely thought the end had come. In their terror, they went back to ancient, forbidden rituals, including human sacrifice. They actually buried people alive in the city forum to try and appease the gods. Hannibal's generals were begging him to march on Rome. In 5 days, his cavalry commander famously told him, "You will be feasting in the capital." But Hannibal hesitated. The Republic was bleeding out. Its allies in southern Italy, like the great city of Capua, were flipping to his side. Its armies were gone. Its treasury was empty.
See, Hannibal had done it. He had achieved his perfect, flawless victory. He had broken Rome's legions, he had shattered its confidence. By any and all logic, the war should have been over. And yet, the giant refused to die.
Because Rome, even though it was beaten, was not broken. From the ashes of Cannae, a new kind of leader was about to rise. A young man who had actually survived the slaughter and now spent every waking moment studying Hannibal's methods, learning from the very man who had almost destroyed his entire world.
His name was Scipio, and his destiny was to take the lessons learned in Rome's darkest, most horrific hour, and one day use them to challenge the master himself. The greatest duel of the ancient world, it was really just beginning.